I always approached our annual family retreat at the lake house with a knot of conflicting emotions. It wasn't exactly dread, not initially anyway. More like a wary optimism, a faint, stubborn hope that this year would be different. That maybe, just maybe, my place in the family wouldn't feel quite so conditional. My name is Riley. I'm in my early 40s, and for the better part of 2 decades, I've been the quiet engine humming in the background of the Sterling family's comfortable wealth. While my younger brother, Jackson, cultivated a public persona, charming, ambitious, the golden boy destined for leadership, I was the one who actually did the work. I took the family's portfolio of investment properties, sprawling across several states, and turned them into a well-oiled machine. I handled the tenants, the maintenance, the legal headaches, the intricate financials, quietly growing the pot while Jackson smiled at donors and gave confident, if slightly vague, speeches. My parents, Thomas and Caroline Sterling, always seemed proud of Jackson's visible success, but my contributions were often met with a polite nod or a comment like, "Riley handles the details, bless her heart." The lake house itself felt like a physical representation of our family dynamic. It was beautiful, sprawling, built on a foundation of old money and updated with modern luxury. A place filled with memories, some genuinely happy childhood ones, others tainted by the subtle, persistent feeling of being slightly outside, looking in. This year felt particularly charged. There were whispers about the future of the family legacy, talk of restructuring assets, maybe even selling off some properties I'd spent years cultivating. I told myself this was it, my chance. Surely they'd finally acknowledge my role, make my position secure, solidify my place not just as the manager, but as a true heir to the fortune I'd helped build. My arrival was typical. I pulled up in my practical sedan, unloaded my own bags. My mother, Caroline, offered a quick air kiss, already scanning the driveway behind me. "Oh, darling, you're here. Good. Jackson and Layla should be arriving any minute." My father, Thomas, gave a brief nod from the porch swing, already engrossed in the newspaper. There was no fanfare, just presence noted. A few minutes later, a sleek black SUV purred to a stop, and Jackson and his wife Layla stepped out, greeted with loud, effusive welcomes, hugs, and immediate offers of help with their matching designer luggage. Layla, all perfect smiles and effortless grace, waved brightly at me from the porch, a wave that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was a familiar script, and the knot in my stomach tightened. The first day unfolded much as expected. Polite conversations circled the edges of deeper topics. Jackson held court, talking about market trends and innovative strategies with a confidence that grated, knowing he barely understood the balance sheets I prepared. I tried a couple of times to interject, offering insights based on the actual performance data I lived and breathed daily. Each time, I was smoothly redirected. "Oh, Riley, dear, that's a bit technical for this lovely evening," my mother would say, or Thomas would clear his throat and change the subject. Jackson would just smile, a benign, slightly patronizing look that said, "Bless her heart," trying to keep up. There were small, familiar slights. Being asked to run to the market for forgotten groceries, just as an important discussion started. Being assigned to organize the kitchen supplies, while Layla lounged by the lake with Caroline. Each one was small on its own, easy to dismiss as absent-mindedness or tradition. But strung together over years, they formed a pattern, a quiet erasure. My distant cousin Anna was there, bless her heart. She sought me out by the old boathouse, away from the main group. "Hey, Riley," she said softly, a genuine smile on her face. "Good to see you. You look tired." Still holding the fort for everyone. Her quiet acknowledgement, the simple act of seeing me, was a small comfort, but it also highlighted the constant invisibility cloak I wore around my immediate family. Uncle Robert, my father's brother, a man of few words but sharp observation, caught my eye once from across the lawn. He gave me a slow, knowing nod, a silent acknowledgement that he saw the dynamic at play. It didn't change anything, but it made me feel slightly less alone in my perception of it. The tension truly ratcheted up on the second evening. This was the formal dinner, the one where, Thomas had announced with importance, the future structure of the family legacy would be discussed. I had spent weeks reviewing financials, preparing notes, anticipating this conversation. This was my domain. I deserved, logically, to be at the center of it. The dining room was set meticulously, a large, imposing main table, gleaming silverware, crystal glasses. My chest felt tight with a familiar blend of hope and anxiety. Maybe tonight was finally the night I was brought into the fold, recognized as a key player in the family's future, not just its functional past. As we gathered, mingling awkwardly with a few key business associates and family friends who were also attending, Thomas cleared his throat. "All right, everyone, find your seats. We have a seating arrangement for this evening's discussion." He gestured towards the main table. My heart lifted. This was it. But then, Caroline stepped forward, a polite, practiced smile on her face. "Now for the main table, we'll have Thomas, myself, Jackson, Layla, Mr. Henderson from the bank, and a few others." She paused, her eyes sweeping over the rest of us. "Riley, darling, we've put you at the smaller table in the sunroom. We need someone responsible there to, well, keep things settled." My breath hitched. The sunroom table. It was set for 6, off to the side, visually and functionally separate from the main event. Keep things settled? There were no unruly children present. The others at the small table were a couple of elderly cousins and family friends who were lovely, but completely uninvolved in the family business. It wasn't just a separate table. It was a declaration. A clear public signal that I was not considered part of the core decision-makers. The air felt thick with unspoken meaning. I saw Anna wince slightly, and Uncle Robert's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. The humiliation was a physical blow. I walked to the sunroom table, my legs feeling heavy, numb. My face felt frozen in a polite mask. I sat down, my back partly turned to the main dining room. From my vantage point, I could see them, my parents, Jackson, Layla, leaning in close, looking at documents, talking in hushed, serious tones. My own notes, prepared over weeks, felt like a cruel joke in my bag. I tried to make conversation with the kind people at my table, but my focus was pulled towards the main room. I caught snippets of their discussion, figures I recognized from my own reports, mention of properties I managed, terms like restructuring and transition of control. This wasn't just a social snub. It was being actively excluded from decisions about the very things I had spent years building and protecting. The knot in my stomach solidified into a hard, cold stone. The hope was entirely gone now, replaced by a chilling certainty. This wasn't accidental. This was deliberate. I couldn't stay there, a silent, sidelined ghost in the room. I made an excuse about a headache. Easy enough. The tension had brought one on, and left the table, murmuring apologies. I could feel their eyes on my back as I walked away, but no one called me back. No one asked if I was really okay. Back in my room, the polished comfort of the suite felt hollow. The beautiful lake view outside the window did nothing to soothe the raw wound of humiliation. The separate table wasn't just a seating arrangement. It was a symbol, a physical representation of my position in their eyes, useful enough to be present, but not important enough to be part of anything that truly mattered. My mind raced, replaying not just tonight, but years of subtle slights, overlooked achievements, and credit given elsewhere. I remembered Jackson being lauded for a brilliant idea that was actually a minor modification of a system I'd implemented years prior. I remembered submitting detailed reports on property performance, only to have them skimmed over, while Jackson's vague proposals were discussed at length. It wasn't just unintentional neglect. It was a pattern of active dismissal and redirection. And tonight felt like the culmination, a public declaration of my irrelevance to their future plans. Sitting there, the hurt began to harden into something colder, more dangerous. Why now? Why this explicit, undeniable exclusion? It felt like they were clearing the decks, making a statement. I remembered a few odd things recently, a lawyer asking for specific, obscure details about property deeds I managed, a strange request from my father for access to certain older financial archives I controlled, a casual comment from Layla asking about my personal savings and investments, disguised as friendly curiosity. At the time, they seemed like isolated incidents. Now, a chilling possibility began to form. Driven by this dawning suspicion and the raw indignity of the dinner, I knew I had to look. My father often worked late in the small study at the lake house, sometimes leaving documents out. It was a long shot, but the feeling that something deeply wrong was happening propelled me. I waited until I thought everyone would be settled after dinner, then quietly slipped out of my room. The house was large, and sounds carried unevenly. I moved silently down the corridor towards the study. As I neared, I heard voices low but clearly audible through the slightly ajar door. Caroline and Jackson. Riley doesn't need to know the specifics yet, my mother was saying, her voice low and brittle, the tone she used when discussing unpleasant business. It's simpler this way. Less complicated. Jackson's voice smooth and confident. Exactly. Once the trust is amended, control of those portfolios will transfer seamlessly. Her management agreements are tied to the current structure. They'll be null and void. And the revised distribution makes sense. Keep the bulk of the assets streamlined under the primary heir. Make sure her name is explicitly removed from that clause regarding the lake house ownership, Caroline added. Thomas agreed it's for the best. This place needs a single vision going forward. Jackson will provide that. Of course, Mother, Jackson replied. Layla and I have already started making plans. It's time this sterling legacy entered a new era. I froze in the hallway, my hand reaching for the doorknob but stopping midair. The words hit me like physical blows, removed from that clause, null and void, streamlined under the primary heir, single vision. It wasn't just exclusion, it was disinheritance. They were actively plotting to strip me of my role, my claim, my very connection to the wealth I had spent my adult life building, and transfer it all to Jackson, who spoke of vision but understood none of the grunt work. And they were doing it secretly, deliberately, while I was in the next room. The separate table wasn't just a snub, it was part of the setup, isolating me while they finalized their plan. My heart wasn't pounding. My hands weren't shaking. Instead, a cold, terrifying stillness settled over me, a clarity that cut through the hurt like ice. They weren't just taking me for granted. They were actively erasing me from the family's financial and physical legacy. And they were doing it behind my back, while I was still useful to them. Steeling myself, I waited until I heard them move away from the door. Then, quiet as a ghost, I slipped into the study. It was just as I'd hoped. My father's briefcase was open on the desk, documents scattered loosely. My eyes scanned quickly, zeroing in on papers with legal headings. There it was, a thick document titled Draft Amendment to the Sterling Family Trust. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up, flipping through the pages. The cold, formal language confirmed everything. Clauses outlining the transfer of specific assets I managed directly to Jackson's control. Revisions to beneficiary distributions that significantly reduced my share compared to Jackson's. Language that effectively removed my long-standing management role without compensation or buyout. A section specifically removing my name from a previously agreed-upon co-ownership clause regarding the lake house upon our parents' passing. It was all there, the blueprint for my professional and financial erasure from the family I'd served so diligently. I felt a wave of nausea, but there were no tears, only a profound, chilling sense of betrayal. They hadn't just excluded me, they had actively plotted against me, seeing me not as family, but as a resource to be exploited and then discarded. My mind snapped into focus. Hurt was a luxury I couldn't afford right now. I needed proof. I pulled out my phone and began taking high-resolution photos of every relevant page of the draft amendment. I found email correspondence with a lawyer discussing these specific changes and screenshots of those too. I quickly logged into the family's shared cloud storage, accessing financial documents and reports I'd created over the years, highlighting my contributions, backing them up to a secure personal drive. I worked silently, methodically, my movements precise despite the turmoil inside. This was no longer about validation. It was about protection. They wanted to write me out of the story? Fine. But I would make sure I held the receipts. Back in the quiet of my room, surrounded by the cold, hard evidence, the resolve solidified. They had leveraged my trust, my competence, my quiet nature for years, while planning my systematic removal. They were confident I wouldn't fight back, that I would just accept my diminished status. They were wrong. My position within the family business, the very role they were trying to strip from me, also gave me unique access and leverage. If they wanted a fight, I would give them one they would never forget. Working through the night, powered by adrenaline and righteous indignation, I accessed the financial systems I managed. These weren't just internal spreadsheets. These were actual bank accounts, investment portfolios, and property management platforms linked to the Sterling family's operating wealth I had significantly grown and overseen for years. I began implementing strategic countermeasures. I placed temporary holds on large operating accounts that funded various family ventures, requiring dual signatures, mine and Thomas's or Caroline's, for any significant withdrawals. I initiated urgent audit requests on specific funds I managed, flagging irregularities I had previously overlooked or explained away. I revoked Jackson and Layla's limited viewing access to certain financial dashboards, citing security reviews. These weren't random acts of spite. They were calculated moves designed to cause immediate disruption to their plan and force their hand, all while being technically within the scope of my existing managerial authority before my planned removal. I was using the chains they had put on me, my responsibility and access, to bind them. The risk was enormous, but the alternative, letting them erase me without a fight, was unbearable. As the first hint of pre-dawn light crept through the blinds, I finished, my fingers sore, my eyes burning. The quiet satisfaction was immense, a potent counterpoint to the betrayal. The next morning, I maintained a deceptive calm. I joined the family for breakfast, polite but distant. I observed them, knowing the bomb I had already dropped into their financial world, while they remained utterly oblivious. Jackson was loud and cheerful, talking about his vision for the properties. Caroline fussed over Layla, making comments about future family events that I clearly wasn't intended to be involved in. Their confidence in their undisturbed plan was palpable, and it added another layer to my cold resolve. Uncle Robert gave me a concerned look as I quietly ate my toast, and Anna offered a warm smile. They saw something was off, but they didn't know the half of it. I waited until the end of breakfast, as people were starting to disperse towards planned activities. The core family, Thomas, Caroline, Jackson, and Layla, were gathered by the large stone fireplace, looking over some maps related to the properties. This was it. The moment of detonation. I walked directly towards them, my steps steady, my expression neutral. They looked up, a flicker of surprise in their eyes. "Riley, dear, are you feeling better?" Caroline asked, that brittle concern back in her voice. "Perfectly," I said, my voice clear and level. "Actually, there's something we need to discuss. Right now." Thomas frowned. "Can't this wait, Riley? We're planning." "No," I stated, looking directly at them. "It can't. It involves the plans you've already made." I paused, letting the weight of my words hang in the air. I found the draft amendment to the family trust. Their faces went pale. Jackson's confident smirk vanished, replaced by shock. Caroline's eyes widened in alarm. Thomas stared, his newspaper forgotten in his hands. "I also overheard your conversation last night," I continued, my voice steady. "About removing me, about streamlining the assets under Jackson, about the lake house." "Riley, that's private." Caroline sputtered, recovering her voice, though it was higher-pitched than usual. "You had no right to snoop." "No right?" I asked, a sharp edge entering my voice. "You were plotting to steal my legacy, my financial security, the results of 20 years of my work, and you think I have no right to know? To see the document where you write me out of existence." "It was just a draft." Jackson blustered, stepping forward. "Nothing was finalized. We were going to talk to you." I laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Don't lie to me, Jackson. I heard you. Less complicated this way. Jackson will handle that portfolio now. You weren't going to talk to me. You were going to present me with a done deal. Just like you sidelined me from the discussion table last night. That was logistics." Layla interjected, though her usual composure was cracking. "No," I said, looking her in the eye. "That was a public demonstration of my planned obsolescence." I turned back to my parents. "You used my competence for years, letting me build wealth while you fed Jackson the spotlight. And all along, you planned to cut me out, give everything to him. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't fight back?" Caroline regained some of her icy demeanor. "Fight back? Riley, don't be ridiculous. You have nothing to fight with." We are your family. We control everything. This was the moment. I smiled, a cold, small smile that didn't reach my eyes. You thought you controlled everything, I said softly. But you forgot who was holding the keys to the vault while you were making your plans. While you were sleeping last night, I wasn't. I placed a hold on the main Sterling Family Holdings operating account. Any significant transaction requires my authorization now. I've also initiated a full audit of several portfolios, effective immediately, and flagged some irregularities I've recently discovered. My lawyer has been informed of the draft trust amendment and your apparent intentions. He'll be in touch with your counsel shortly. The color drained from their faces again, this time replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated panic and rage. You did what? Thomas roared, finally dropping his newspaper. Caroline shrieked, You can't do that. You have no right. Oh, I have every right, I said, my voice gaining strength. As the person who built and managed those assets for years, who holds the access codes you are too lazy or incompetent to fully take over yet, yes, I absolutely have the right. You wanted to cut me out financially? Fine. But the one who writes the checks just stopped writing them, unless they're written to my specifications after a full accounting. Jackson lunged forward, his face contorted in fury. You conniving. Stop, Thomas yelled, holding him back, his eyes wide with shock at the financial chaos I had just unleashed. Caroline was visibly trembling, her practiced composure shattering. You'll regret this, Riley. We'll ruin you. You'll get nothing. Actually, I said, turning to walk away, I think you'll find I already have quite a lot. More than you realized. And I intend to keep every single penny of it, and then some. Consider this my resignation, effective immediately. From the business, and from this family. I didn't wait for their response. I walked away from the fireplace, from their shock and fury, and headed towards my room. I could hear their frantic, angry voices rising behind me, shouting my name, shouting threats. But the sound felt distant, already fading. Packing took only minutes. There was no hesitation, no looking back. I wasn't just leaving a vacation. I was leaving a lifetime of trying to belong to people who never truly wanted me. I left the welcome gift basket untouched on the bed, another symbol of their superficial gestures. I took only what was mine, what I had brought, and the evidence I had gathered. Walking out of the lake house, the air felt lighter, cooler. I saw Uncle Robert standing by his car, watching. He didn't wave or call out, but as I passed, he met my eyes and gave me another slow, understanding nod, almost a salute. Anna stood by the porch, looking pale but giving me a quick, brave smile and a thumbs up when she thought no one else was looking. These small acts of quiet support meant more than any effusive welcome ever had. As my car pulled away from the familiar driveway, leaving the beautiful, toxic lake house behind, my phone began to ring incessantly. Calls from Caroline, from Thomas, from Jackson. Texts full of exclamation points, alternating between demands, threats, and panicked attempts at negotiation. I silenced the phone, the frantic buzzing a testament to the immediate, devastating impact of my actions. They were reeling. Good. I didn't drive back to my quiet apartment. Instead, I headed straight to the city, to the office of the lawyer I had contacted the night before, recommending I call him urgently based on the nature of the documents I described. His office was quiet, professional, a sanctuary of logic after the emotional chaos. Mr. Davies, a man with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, listened intently as I recounted everything, the years of work, the sidelining, the overheard plot, the discovered document, the deliberate exclusion at the dinner, and my subsequent actions. I laid out the evidence. The photos of the draft trust, the email screenshots, the records of my financial actions, the documentation of my years of managing their assets with little formal recognition or compensation beyond a modest salary. Mr. Davies reviewed it all, his expression remaining steady. After a long silence, he leaned back in his chair. Riley, he said, his voice measured, what they attempted to do, and in part have already documented, is quite frankly appalling. Based on this evidence, you have a very strong case. We can challenge the validity of this proposed trust amendment, potentially claim significant compensation for your years of uncredited work and asset growth, and investigate the irregularities you flagged. This is not just a family squabble. It's potentially financial misconduct. They made a grave error underestimating you. Sitting there in that calm professional space, the full weight of what I had done and what was to come settled over me. There would be a fight. It would be messy, public, and painful. My relationship with my parents and brother was irrevocably broken. But looking at the evidence, hearing Mr. Davies's clear assessment, I felt no regret. Only a profound sense of rightness. They wanted to write me out of their story, to make me invisible, a ghost who paid the bills but had no claim to the legacy. They thought I would disappear quietly. But I wasn't disappearing. I was stepping out of their shadow, taking back what was mine, and finally writing my own ending. The fight was just beginning, but for the first time in my life, I was fighting on my own terms, armed with the truth and in control.